Welcome to Stories from the HR Frontline. We're here with Karen Powell today, the SVP of Talent and Learning at IQVIA. And so we just wanted to kind of jump in, Karen, and just ask you, how are you doing right now? I think you're in South Carolina is what you were talking about before we got on.
Yes, the four walls of my Manhattan apartment were driving me a bit stir crazy, so decided to escape for a little while. But doing good, keeping really busy, but healthy, and doing a lot of great work. So all good here. Hope you are too.
Yes, doing well, and thank you for making time to talk to us today. So tell us a little bit about the journey you've been on. So, when did the implications of COVID-19 sort of really impact your organization? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So it's been interesting. I've been here 12 months, just over 12 months at IQVIA. And obviously when I started, built the normal roadmap that you build over a couple of years. And because we're in 100 countries, we've actually seen that COVID wave start, late January, early February, where it started in China, obviously, then going through to Japan, then obviously throughout Europe. But when I look at my roadmap, what's interesting is through all of the waves, a lot of things on the roadmap are just being accelerated. So all of the directionality that we wanted to take the organization in has been not just accelerated, I think, exemplified or amplified as we start to look at the skills of the future and the future proofing. So when I think about the COVID wave, it's changed the way people have actually seen work and approach the way they do things on a daily basis. So when you say the roadmap or the journey of COVID, it has been kind of cyclical, where we've taken people offline, then we've brought people back online, we've brought people, remote, and then we've brought people face to face. So it's been a whole, long journey in a very short period of time.
What challenges have you faced, and sort of how are you approaching, those different challenges as you've been navigating that?
It's really quite fascinating because when it started in China, obviously we were part of trying to build some of the skill sets or the changes and the communication patterns, but I don't think we were recognizing the magnitude of the things that were coming down the pipeline. And so, we started putting together, cheat sheets, quick, online learnings to help people cope. And the reality was it was a lot bigger than just a couple of online learnings or LinkedIn learnings or programs. It was really about, we had to take a step back and build committees where we built enterprise committees, local committees, regional committees, and not just around health and safety or moving people virtually or back into the office. It was really about how do we look at everything from being reactionary right now, but then also going further and having a look at what are the medium-term implications and then what are the longer-term implications. And so you get so caught up and the business gets so caught up in what do we need today just to survive, and then starting to think about, okay, we can't just make rash decisions based on the data we have today. We really have to look at what does that mean for the short, medium, and long term.
Any kind of secrets that you've sort of found in terms of, how do you get, you mentioned the safety and kind of helping people with that, but other ways that you found to kind of get the business to really sort of start thinking about the long term?
Yeah, I think when everything started, we probably, like a lot of other companies, had the COVID websites, one's for managers, one for employees, one for HR. But I think when we started our communication strategy, it was build awareness, build knowledge, build skill. And then what we've slowly started to do was actually shift the mindset and shift the tone of all of the communications. So it's now, what should we be thinking about? It's not just saying, we're going to give up office space because, 35% of people are going to work from home. We're actually saying, okay, of those 35% that are going to work from home, how many of those will work from home forever and actually choose to work from home, because we know that's another motivator. But how do we change the whole shift in the global mindset and what the future mindset should be and what it's going to take to future-proof an organization, and then what is it going to take to future-proof skills or capabilities? So we've started to shift all of our communications around that shifting capability thought. So we've got a communication plan where last week we did the communication around shifting to more agile mindset. Now we're starting to talk about what's the future proofing and what does that mean? And then what are the skills of the future and what kind of things in your seat today can you do to start thinking about the future?
What's the role of learning been, in the crisis so far?
Yeah, so I think learning as in the crisis has been trying to get people comfortable with things like the technology we're using, how to look at people when you're actually engaging them virtually, all of the normal type of things that we've had to shift and that we take for granted, but really do have an impact when you're working virtually. So it's all of that. Then there's the communication piece that we're spearheading. But then as we're starting to shift that mindset and that communication or that, global mindset, it's about, okay, what are the skills that in your seat today can you start focusing on so that you'll be ready for tomorrow? So we're trying to look at all of those skills. And when we look at things like workforce planning, when we look at the business strategy, when we look at the availability of skills and talent and capabilities around the world, we're now able to say, hang on a second, all of those gaps that we thought we had because of the restrictions, because we needed people to have FaceTime or be in an office, all that's going away. And look at this plethora of opportunity out there. So it's shifting to that. And if we've got this plethora of talent and around the globe and we're not restricted by location, what does that mean from a skill set? And so what are the major skill sets? So we're focused very much on, project management skills, both traditional and agile. We're looking at client-facing skills and what does it look like now to run a client-facing interaction virtually versus face-to-face, and what does that mean for travel? And then when we look at building pipeline of leadership, we've always known disruptive leadership skills were an important part of that, but what we've done is actually shift the face-to-face high potential programs that we literally had just rolled out the week before we were sent home. We've changed the focus of those and taken the best content that's relevant for today, where people can bring their experiences today, and we've actually redesigned the content for a virtual journey.
So as you think about, the leadership development and the crisis and all of that, I know coming into the year, you had a very robust, leadership development agenda.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, what that has meant for you.
It threw all my plans out the window, if I'm being honest. And I'm being, joking in a way, but I mean, we had nice roadmaps, plans, timelines, everything sorted for the year for development. And the reality was that that wasn't going to work. And we couldn't just postpone, because the reality of it is it's even more important now to make sure that we're developing pipeline, make sure we're developing skill. So as I said, with the programs that we're continuing, we're making sure that the content is really relevant to the disruption, but really relevant to be able to be more interactive so people can learn from each other and from what they're experiencing right now. So it's most definitely a great opportunity, and people are actually being slightly bolder in an organization that maybe isn't known for its boldness in some areas, so which is helping people think differently about work, about the future, about learning in the flow of work, about all of that. So I think opportunities, yes, there are so many that people are starting to recognize. And then I think the role of learning and leadership is absolutely accelerating. But I think one of the important things that we've tried to get all of our leaders tapped into is it's not enough to do lots of stuff. We really have to be conscious and really build a strategy and think about it. We think about it at an enterprise level, and this is the direction we're going at an enterprise level. And it's going to manifest slightly differently in each business and each region, but we're all marching and trying to move the same needles, and it's all linked to our business strategy. So I think people are more open and aware, and we're tapping into a lot of leaders internally for their subject matter expertise. So yeah, I think lots of opportunity and lots of mindset shift, which is pretty cool.
How do you think the future of learning is going to look, post-COVID?
Right, we talk about learning in the flow of work, and I think the reality is when you look at what people are learning, when they're not applying the learnings, it's going to take longer for people to get up to speed, and a lot of the skills that people are learning, I couldn't even call them capabilities yet because people haven't used them, or the skill is slightly outdated by the time they get to use them. So I think I have this dream of having a more apprenticeship type model where people are learning the skill, the technical skill, and then really applying it so that they're getting the experience in building that muscle and that capability. And so that's always happening. And for me, that's learning in the flow of work. And I think virtual learning obviously is going to help support that. But I think because people are culturally used to different kinds of, like whether it's face-to-face or college or classroom or whatever it is, this is going to open up a plethora of opportunities.
But how has this crisis also affected just leadership in general, the conversation around leadership at your organization?
When I started, we hadn't done a lot of leadership development. We hadn't done a lot of assessment, and we didn't have a lot of data around what that profile of the future leader should look like. So you think only really 10, 11 months ago, maybe 10, 9 months ago, we were doing all of our due diligence internally to have a look at what was the future of our organization, what were the skills, the experiences, capabilities that we needed. So we had built a profile, and the disruptive leader was on the top of that list. We were lucky in that respect, and we hadn't obviously anticipated what was coming down the pipe, but because we already had that baseline, we're able to pivot really quickly and bring in some of the things that have had to change in the last couple of months into the design of the programs that we're running. So I don't think the leadership profile has changed. I think what I've gained, or what we're gaining, is the fact that when we look at assessment, for example, as part of our leadership, we now are able to say, did people step up during COVID, and how did they react? How did they flex their strategy? How did they lead their people? And it's a data point to show us where their gaps are so that we can then help them build the next level or build the capabilities around their current gaps or the mistakes that were made. But then also the other side, we have seen people step up and be real leaders of the organization who maybe weren't on our radar before. And so they're now coming through the pipeline. So we're bringing people up through a high potential, or building people up through our leadership pipeline that we didn't have data on before. So it's a really positive way to leverage in the moment data to influence how we build those future leaders.
So what have you learned about, the organization during the process? What have you learned about yourself as you've kind of gone through this?
What I've learned is people are not as rigid as they think they are. People think they know all the answers, and moments like these allow people to be vulnerable and allow people to be empathetic to that vulnerability. So I think we're seeing a shift in people bringing their authentic self to work, right? And so I've learned that now it is actually okay to have the dog jump in or the kids jump in. Or it doesn't matter, right? What matters is the productivity and the content and the work that gets done. So I think I'm hoping and I'm optimistic that will come into the workplace of the future and be part of the future proofing. So, I think it's good learning for individuals and for organizations, which is really cool.
If you could send a message to your leaders, what would you say to them to motivate and encourage them to continue to learn and develop themselves?
I think a couple of things. I think if you start with a growth mindset, you will future-proof the organization and you'll future-proof yourself. So I think that's a really big takeaway that I'd want to share. And we have a bit of a tagline that we've developed through the communications that we do, and it's let's never go back to work, let's go forward. And so we tag that on a lot of the things that we're starting to communicate, so people go, okay, let's not go back to work, ha ha ha, but actually hang on a second, it's okay to go forward. And so it's you have permission to go forward and do things differently, which I think is the message, that there's lots of opportunity.
Very well said. So thank you very much, Karen, for coming here and sharing your story and the story of your organization, and super appreciate it. Thanks
for having me. Nice to see you. Thanks, Adam.